Okay, it is 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to tonight's presentation. It's always a pleasure to present to you all. A little bit of background about us and ourselves. My name is John Mantilla. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Parco. Parco stands for Pension Americans Retirement Company, and we do retirement and financial planning for anybody with a pension, but especially government employees. And we work with government employees no matter what stage of their career that they're in. So a lot of the times we work with folks just starting out and wanting to make sure they are taking full advantage of all the benefits offered to them through the federal government. Then we work with folks in the middle of their career, hoping that they've maybe positioned themselves well after life change, like having kids, getting married, things like that. And then work with a lot of folks who are at the end of their career, nearing the end of their career, or who maybe are concerned that the career is about to end abruptly, like we're going to talk about tonight, and want to make sure that they understand all the different scenarios that they need to game out. So no matter what stage of the career that you're in, we work with folks across the country and around the world. And I can say that because we actually did a presentation for some folks over in Germany this morning, which was pretty fun. So I know that there's a couple new people on the call tonight. So for the benefit of all of them, I like to always just point out a couple ground rules. The first, if you have questions, you can ask them in the question window within the Zoom call. There's also a Q&A section, or I'm sorry, a chat section. People have been really liking to chat inside of there, so you can do so there as well. Throughout the presentation as well, there's a QR code in the top right-hand corner that links to our platform. Some of you maybe have accounts, some of you haven't set up accounts. I'd recommend setting up an account. We actually just rolled out a RIF mode. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight, if you want to see how your numbers would look under a RIF scenario, you actually now have the ability to toggle into that right from the platform itself. It's pretty slick. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about RIFs. How do you best prepare? So we'll talk about the latest information. It's kind of crazy is that at about 4 o'clock today with some updates that we had to adjust the presentation to reflect. We'll go through some RIF basics. We'll talk about how to prepare and then how to get started. So let's go through the latest information. What do we know about these RIFs? Well, we like to think all the way back to the beginning of the Trump administration. So back in the administration, the admin said that agencies need to be preparing for RIFs. This was even before they had announced really the incongruous with the RPs being announced was that agencies needed to prepare for and have a game plan ready for reductions in forces or RIFs. So this has been going on for a while. Now, as the government shut down after the end of the fiscal year, there was a memo sent out that basically said, "Hey, look, further RIFs are coming, and get prepared." And I know a lot of folks that we work with at CDC, at Treasury, at many agencies, um, just this week or early or late last week. It was in the news a lot. If you have an agency that you work for that received these memos, please mention it in the chat window. But basically, with the government shut down, the Trump administration was saying, "Well, look, now we can start to RIF people at our leisure because the government shut down. So, as the executive branch, we have the control to do so." Well, earlier today, District Judge Susan Ilston, who's based in California, Northern California, blocked those RIFs. So, in her order, she said a whole bunch of things, but the crux of it was that the administration has been acting too quickly and without thinking through its decisions. So, a pretty scathing uh, decision. Now, as with the DRP, as with other RIF activities in the past that we've seen this year, um, it's these district court judges. The administration argues don't have the authority or the jurisdiction to do this. So I think there's going to be an immediate appeal, and that appeal is going to take some time. But I would not be surprised if that decision was highly contested and potentially could be overturned. And so we always want to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so if this ruling is overturned or changed, or if the administration is allowed to proceed in full or in part, and people are affected by RIFs, we wanted to go through what the basics were of that. So people ask, hey, who's generally most protected from RIFs? And that's generally folks that are expected to work during the government shutdown. So law enforcement, border patrol, national security, military personnel, TSA folks, people at the post office, those people that are considered essential to the operations of the government generally are very protected from RIFs from a everybody else um, is potentially exposed to this. Those most vulnerable or those, it depends on your position, of course, too. I know that there's been more, so we know there's been more targeted RIF efforts at different agencies, especially like CDC. Generally, with RIFs, it's, whoever they announce. Um, the RIF process does require, let's say there was a RIF announced today. There's it can't happen tomorrow, right? The RIF has to happen at most. You have to be given 60 days notice for a RIF. That's the law. Um, and so if you are RIFed and you're not eligible for retirement or a immediate pension, and we'll go through those situations in just a second, you can get severance. That severance is calculated as 1 week of pay per year of service, 2 weeks of pay per year of service after your 10th year of service. So if you're RIFed and that's the situation that you're in where you're not eligible for a full retirement, and we'll go through those examples in just a second, or you're not eligible for a discontinued service retirement, and you get severance, and then when it comes to your benefits, you will lose access to your FEHB, you'll lose access to your FEGLI. Your FEDVIP actually terminates immediately. FEHB and FEGLI, they have a little bit of a grace period. And then importantly, your TSP does go with you. That's yours. So let's go through a practical example, like somebody like Neil who works. He has 22 years of service. He's 44 years old. He has a $100,000 annual salary. So he's not fully eligible because he doesn't have the age and the years of service, which we'll go through in just a minute. And he's not eligible for a discontinued service retirement. So we know that he's going to be uh, affected by the RIFs, and he would get a severance. So his severance, based on his would be $91,231 paid to him by over the course of 47.6 weeks. So he'd be owed that severance. He would also be owed a pension when he turns 60, because that's when he would otherwise have been able to get a pension. So he would get a pension. It'd be based on his 22 years of service, pardon me. So it'd be 22 years times his high three, let's call it $100,000 just to keep the math, times 1%. So that pension that he'd be owed would be about 22,000. That wouldn't kick in for another 18 or so years, 16 or so years. He's 44. And then, like I said, that those benefits terminate immediately. So the folks that would be excluded from severance pay, the people that the RIFs affect, but whose benefits aren't nearly as impacted, are folks who are eligible to retire. Now, the retirement eligibility uh, requirements during a RIF are more expansive than they are. So, as a refresher, generally, to retire from the federal government, you need to have satisfied one of three requirements. The first is based on what's called your minimum retirement age or your MRA. So, for everybody on the call tonight, your MRA is dependent on the year that you're born. Anybody born in 1968 or before has already reached their MRA. Anybody born in 1969, your MRA is 56 and 10 months. And anybody born in 1970 or after, their MRAs are 57. So generally, to retire from the federal government to be fully eligible, you need to have hit that minimum retirement age and have 30 years of service, be age 60 with 20 or more years of service, or age 62 with 5 or more years of service. So long as you satisfy one of those three requirements, you get an immediate fully eligible pension, fully eligible retirement. In addition to that, during a RIF, they make what's available basically what they call a discontinued service retirement or a DSR. It basically lowers the eligibility requirements. So in addition to the three examples we discussed, you could also be age 50 with 20 or more years of service, or any age 25 or more years of service. So it basically follows the VERA. So it lowers the requirements. So if you remember back to Neil, yeah, he had 22 years of service, but he was so he's one of those folks that falls into the severance bucket. For the folks that are at least 50 with 20 or more years of service, have at least 25 years of service, or satisfy one of the three general fully eligible requirements, you get to retire fully eligible from the government. What does this mean? This is a big deal. It means you get to keep your federal health care with you in retirement. You get to pay the same price that you're paying while you're working for that federal health care in retirement. So you as a retiree pay the same price as somebody that's still employed by the federal government. That is a massive, massive deal when it comes to retirement planning. You also get to keep your FEGLI, your Federal Employee Group Life Insurance. You get to keep your FEDVIP if you're enrolled in that, the dental and vision program. And if you, let's say that you separate or you do a DSR, you leave before you hit your MRA, you'll also be eligible for that first supplement, the special supplement, but that supplement won't kick in until you hit your minimum retirement age. So what does this mean? Let's say that you are a RIFT and you have 52 years of service, or you're 52 years of service. You're 52 years old and you have 28 years of service. So you have the age and the years of service to fall under the discontinued service. You'll get an immediate, you'll get to keep your federal health care, your FedVIP, but because you're 52, your first supplement won't start for 5 years until you turn 57. It'll automatically kick on. There's nothing you need to do. So how do you prepare for this? How do we prepare for RIFs? Just like with everything else with this, what's been happening with the DRPs and all the volatility that government employees have been going through, we recommend it to get your documents, get your stuff while you can. So you can download your EOPF. I know many of you don't have access to that right now with the shutdown, but as soon as you get that access back or whenever you get access, get those records. You'll want to have those for the future just in case anything happens. Things like your S-60 earning statements, we recommend you download all of it. You can store that right on the Parco platform in a secure Amazon S3 secure environment. Also, if you are Rift, and we'll go back to that example of somebody that's 52 with 20 years, a lot of people are really worried about whether or not they can touch their money in their TSP. And I know we've reviewed this in past webinars, but it's really worth a refresher, especially in the context of RIFs. Is that yes, there's a couple ways that you can access your retirement savings, even if you're under age 59 and a half. The first is what's called the IRS Rule of 55. So this states that so long as you separate on or after the calendar year that you turn 55, you can take money out of your 401k or your TSP without any penalty. So you can take withdrawals if you want, you can take one-time withdrawals, you can take systematic withdrawals at your leisure, so long as you separate on the calendar year that you turn 55. So why would that be important? Well, let's say that you are 56 years old, you have 22 years of service, so you're not normally fully eligible to retire, and you get RIFT. So then you fall under the discontinued service retirement. You're going to get your pension. You're going to have your first supplement start in a year or so. And you're thinking to yourself, well, hey, look, that's all well and good, but that money in my TSP I can't touch. You actually can. So that's like the first, I think, really important one. And this is true regardless of RIFs, but we always like to mention it as a tool in your tool belt, especially for those who may be separating from the government before they're 59 and a half and who might have anxiety or concerns about how they're going to make that work because they think they can't access their retirement savings. Rule 55 is one way you can. The second way that you can are what are called 72T withdrawals. So a 72T withdrawal is a type of withdrawal that allows you to take money out even if you're under age 55. So the IRS says that so long as you take what are called substantially equal periodic payments for a period of 5 years or until you're 59 and a half, whichever is longer, um, then you can take money out of your TSP or an IRA without any tax penalties or withdrawal penalties. So you have to take at least one of those per year. They have to be substantially equal. They have to continue for 5 straight years or until you're 59 and a half, like I said. And the payment amount is based on a IRS approved calculation method. There's three different calculation methods. There's the RMD method, required minimum distribution method, fixed amortization method, or fixed annuitization method. And all of these are based on your life expectancy and IRS interest rate guidelines. And that's something we can help you calculate. But this has become particularly important in the context of RIFs because plenty of people are being RIFed or worried about separating, and maybe they're 53 years old and they have 24 years of service, and they think to themselves, my goodness, I'm not going to be able to touch any of my money because the IRS rule of 55 doesn't apply. Well, actually, you can, and it's through these 72T withdrawals. They're a little bit complex to calculate, and that's something we hope every single day do. So when you set your free appointment to go through your retirement planning with us through the platform or after the call, that's something that we can help calculate. Some of the pros of the 72T withdrawals is it allows you to access that money before you're 59. It can be useful for early retirees and provides predictable cash flow on top of your first supplement, on top of your pension. But once you have those payments coming in, you have to stick with them. And if you violate that, then it does trigger a 10% penalty. So you want to be really careful with how you manage it. And it does lock in those distributions regardless of the market. But for those who are retiring before 55 or who want that long-term financial stability with that constant paycheck, uh, uh, and who are doing maybe an IRA rollover, it can make an awful lot of sense. So we've gone through quite a bit today when it comes to RIFs. I know that um, I don't know if this judge's ruling from earlier today creates more uncertainty or less uncertainty. I think it creates more. It certainly like delays things, which gives you more time to plan. And so when we think about planning, what we would recommend for anybody that's worried about RIFs, which I think is a lot of folks on the call tonight, is first model out how you'd be impacted by RIFs. And certainly in the chat window here and in the Q&A, if you have a specific situation you want us to go through, just message that and we'll go through it here live on the call tonight. Then also, it's always just recommended save as much as you can, especially right now. Making sure that you're buckling down to have those stores just to be flexible is really important. Determine the lifestyle that you want to live in retirement. So when you're thinking about these different scenarios, okay, how do we want to live in retirement as a household? And then figuring out what gap, if any, exists. And then you can get started by doing so by creating your account on our website, goparco.com, which has all these things ready and does all this planning for you. And one of our teammates can obviously, of course, help you out when you set your one-on-one appointment. So with that, I will turn things over to the Q&A section, and I'm monitoring the chat here as well. So if you have scenarios, if you have things you're concerned about, especially we always like on these webinars too, if there's things that you're hearing from your specific agent, always like to share that information. Say, hey, here's what we're hearing at IRS. Here's what we're hearing at Treasury. Here's what went on. Always really helpful to use this as a forum. Okay, so Pamela asks, I'm 64, will be 65 in March, but I have 19 years. Will I get a full retirement? So yes, Ms. Chambers, based on your age and your years of service, even if there was get a fully eligible retirement. Now we didn't go through it tonight, but can stick it out to 20 years of service. That would be beneficial because you will get a 10% boost on your pension if you can make it to 20 years. If you can't, that's okay. But if that's in the cards, it's great to do so. Now, if at any point between now and then there is a RIF, you'll still get a full eligible pension, no reduction in your benefits, no loss of benefits, no anything. You have the age and the years of service, you're good to go. Thank you. And also, we always ask this too on the webinars if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover. Um, we obviously want to be very flexible with the RIFs that were coming down. Um, so we did that presentation tonight, and who knows, we might have to do it again next week. But if there's another topic you'd like us to go through, please suggest that in the question window. We do listen to that and make our content based on what your feedback is. Okay, so John, he's 58 with 12 years of service. If RIF, would I be able to collect FERS right away? I've not purchased active duty time back. Could I do so after a RIF? Great questions. So the first thing I would recommend is as soon as possible, start the process to buy back your military. That is a no-brainer, and you can't do that in retirement. So let's get that started now. I mean, you can shoot an email or dialing to us over at info@GoParco, and uh, we'll set up a time to do that with you together just to get that process. Now, you are 58 with 12 years of service. So if there was a RIF for you, you would fall under what we consider a fully eligible retirement, but you would fall under an MRA plus 10 retirement. So in an MRA plus 10 retirement, you'd still get an immediate pension. However, it would be reduced by 5% for every year that you are under age. Now, what's important about that is that if you do the MRA plus 10, if there was a RIF, you would get to keep your federal health care for life. Now, you wouldn't get the first supplement, so that's not great. But you would get to keep your federal health care for life, which for most people is like the most important benefit aside from their pension. So I hope that helps. And I'm actually going to just shoot you a quick message here just with our info. I'm going to shoot you a message with our email address. And if you coordinate with us offline, we'll set up a time to go through and help you buy back the military time. I hope that was helpful. Keep those questions coming if there's other scenarios that you want to go through, or if you're hearing things from your agencies, gotten emails, we'd love to know more about them. We had some clients tell us at Treasury they'd gotten an email. CDC, obviously, that was even in the news. Um, so, there's another person that says, if I want to invest my TSP, can I change the amount? Can the amount be changed at any time? So I don't know exactly what you're asking here, so maybe you want to clarify. But the TSP is not affected by the government shutdown. And also, oh, for payment to you, you can. So you can adjust that payment at any time. It's also something we help people strategize is like, hey, how much should I set aside to contribute to help live the life I want to live? Um, but with TSP itself, you can change that at any time. I think they let you do it maybe once a month, but effectively, it's basically at any time you want. Thank you. All right, we'll stay around for a few more minutes just to let any other questions that you all have. If there's other scenarios you want to talk about or your specific, please post it in here. Now's a great time to leverage us while we're on the phone. So, how will we be notified if there is a rift? Well, we have heard from folks that we've talked to about the rifts is they've gotten an email saying that reduction in force and that they're affected. Especially during a shutdown, it would very likely come from an email. Now, it's an interesting question though. Like, how would they tell you if you can't access your federal email? That's a good question. And that I don't know. I haven't had an answer to that. Um, I will I will find an answer though for you. That's a good question. Oh, so Jason says that um, they'll all you the postal service says they'll also send you an email to your personal email. So if work has your personal email on file, then they can reach you there. I believe that, and that sounds. I haven't heard that specifically from anybody, so I can't. I can't. Speak. If that's happened before, then that makes sense to me. Ah, okay, yeah. As part of and for those of you who can't see the chat, as part of the furlough process, they ask for your personal contact information. So that's how they can reach you. That makes sense. Thank you, Jason. So Mark says, I have a little over 2 years with the federal government. I'm not eligible for a pension. If I am RIFed, would I get the money back that I contributed? You would. You would get that money back. That's a great question, Mark. Thank you. Hopefully, you're all finding this helpful. I always like going through people's scenarios live because, I imagine some of you are sitting there wondering, hey, is this going to affect me or how's this negatively going to, am I a part of the group that's going to be most impacted? And it's nice to know if you are. And then obviously, it's nice to know if you are. I'll keep this open for just a few more minutes. All right. Of course. Thank you, sir. If there's questions, I'll let you all go. As always, if you have suggestions for our next webinar, please let us know. We've had a lot of folks saying that they want to go through like TSP strategies, especially with the G fund being able to be borrowed from, and people are wondering like how they should invest, things like that. On our plate here soon. Some FEHB strategies. I know that people are really concerned what the rates are going to be. I know we're concerned about what our rates are going to be for our company. That's something we're thinking about too. But if there's ever a topic that you're like, hey, I would really love it if you guys covered this, tell us. Like that's we want it to be as valuable as possible for the most federal employees and retirees as possible. So as always, it's a pleasure to present to you all. Have a great evening. Be well, and we'll see you all next week.